an important thing to remember when you're doing shamanistic work, especially like when you start to get to that diagram level, when you're creating diagrams, it's like very important to understand that some of these diagrams that you're creating to like kind of map something that might be more ethereal, it might not be like for other people. It might not be an accessible model. It might be a model that is built off of dependencies that are only in your brain. And I say this for two reasons. One, because a lot of times I make crazy little diagrams in my journals and stuff. Um, and I look back on them and I'm like, I don't really even know what I was like getting at here. And part of it was because I'm just trying to work with spirit and there can be too much stuff in my fucking head at times. And it just kind of clarifies the messaging I get if I just put something down with some kind of order. Um, but it's kind of just to like free you of an obligation that the things that you plot or plan in your mind and put on paper have to make sense, because they really don't. I think the goal of it is to like kind of cleanse your mind out, and then because sometimes the like spiritual awakening comes with like some kind of like God complex, and I don't think all God complexes are bad. It really depends on the God, but it can be concerning if you believe the things that you've plotted out are like universal knowledge. The types of consciousness maps that we work through, they are like a lot of them that we use are like very detailed and have been like cross-checked with like a lot of different like scholars and occultists and stuff, but it's like there's been checks and balances, right? Because sometimes I'll see a reality map that someone's made, and it's not to say that they're not like trying to demonstrate something that is super valuable or it's not important, but I think it can be like unwise to accept every reality map that you might see on an app as something that you could functionally use. Because a lot of times those missing gaps that are like foundational knowledge and like it doesn't need to be written down for the person who created it, it would be necessary for you to have to understand it as it was written, and with your mind filling in those missing blanks with information that is more relevant to your experience, it can create a really bad psychosis system that you feel is validated because it comes from somebody who you find valid and respect. And I say this as like almost a disclaimer too, like for like if you're using my tarot readings or like trying to take my advice or stuff, there is like a level of foundational knowledge that I kind of like just assume that people have when they engage with my content. And that's why I'm not really pressed when it doesn't, like, I'm not getting numbers. Like, obviously I wouldn't. I'm like, this is so fucking niche. But just kind of bear that in mind as you work with any magic system, even if it is an established magic system, because I also find that one of those bigger gaps can just be like cultural relativism, especially like when working with closed practices. That's why they're fucking closed, because you wouldn't be able to really grasp some of the base tenets. Like, I feel like a lot of like African systems come from like, or a lot of indigenous systems come from like a community basis or an acknowledgement of heavenly divine beings or something like that. And if you approach those systems like from a individualistic or a terrestrial mindset, you're not going to be able to actually activate or work with the knowledge in the system, because you won't be able to fill in those blanks, and it might just feel like nonsense, right? And again, that's why I gatekeep a lot of my practices, quite frankly, because they do have like basis in like mentality that isn't necessarily widespread or culturally accepted. Like the actual work I do, I'm not really trying to speak gibberish at you, because my fear is that someone who might not be grounded, or just might not have access to the knowledge that is foundational to it, might just take what I say and run with it. Like, I already see people take what I say and run with it, and so I tend to be very. I do my best to make sure that it's not going to send anyone running off a cliff, but there's always going to be somebody who's in that full energy, and it's like, best of luck, bestie. Um, but yeah, I just felt that like I should put that disclaimer on it, just because my system works for me. It works for me because of who I am and what I've thought and who I've worked with and my experiences and stuff. And sometimes those are the invisible factor in um, in understanding. Like, I was reading this one sociology book, and I need to get it again. And it was like basically talking about how this person was sent to Japan to like study them for, I think, war purposes or some shit, but not directly. Like, you know how that goes. And what they find in general with their sociology practices, the things that are most central to culture, the things that are unspoken because they're commonly known. And it's something that I struggle with every time I move, because I'm like, I seem like an asshole because there's a social understanding that everybody here knows and I don't know, and I'm not doing it, like with greetings or um, there's a lot of wild stuff here. There's a lot of culture here, and a lot of times the only way that you really experience it is by like being in it, and then you can point to things and be like, "Yo, what's that? What's going on?" And at that point, someone can be like, "Oh, you don't know? Well, this is this, that, this, and third," and it starts a dialogue. And I feel like that's like the kind of relationship I've had with spirit in working through all of these different practices and learning more and more and more. And yeah, I just think you should be mindful of it, like as you enter into a spiritual practice, that you should ask questions, and you shouldn't just take things at face value, especially like if it seems like it's obvious, right? Because what's obvious to one practitioner um, might be so foundational and the most important thing to ask about. And so you really shouldn't be afraid to just like, if not ask about it, research it and just kind of get that understanding before you go and go off with it. But then there's this other energy where the internet is a hellscape. So a lot of this stuff where you get a deeper understanding is like misinformation. So trusted sources, Wikipedia is the GOAT, honestly. If you have access to like JSTOR or like academic papers where you can get primary and secondary sources, or if you can find indigenous people who were never separated from the practice that you're seeking, that I highly recommend that shit, because TikTok will have you shaking your pretty little ass on the side of the street, thinking that it's magic, and you'll get scooped up, and I'll never see you again, bitch. So be careful.